Hello, so hopefully you can all hear me okay. Welcome to the first Bruce Springsteen guitar live stream. Feel free to chat in the comments. Hopefully I have tested the audio and video, so hopefully you can hear everything okay. And we're going to go through lots of questions from subscribe stars and patrons. So if you're not familiar with subscribe stars, it's subscribestar.com/Bruce Springsteen guitar. So this is where you can subscribe and get access to PDFs, backing tracks, guitar profiles. These are all sent out via email on the 3rd of the month, so they're not actually stored on the Hi Carl, good to see you here. Good. Ralph, good. Thanks very much. Cool, glad it's all working. Haven't played the guitar yet, so hopefully that works as well. Yes, we're going to go through lots of questions throughout the hour, and hopefully you can get some use and benefit out of this. So Subscribe Star is where I'm answering questions, and Patreon as well, but if you're thinking about subbing, go on Subscribe Star because Patreon take massive fees. But also a quick announcement, my website is now done, so if you're not interested in subscribing and things like that to Subscribe Star, you can get files now, just individual files. It's really cleanly laid out, so just go to jsmusicschool.co.uk and you'll be able to get all the files there. There's categories there. It's really easy to use, so hopefully you find that useful. Cool. So what we're going to do, so I'm using OBS, which I've never used before, so I'm hoping this all works. So the first thing we're going to look at, this is a question from Carl. So yeah, sorry Ralph, there's no way I'm going to be able to prepare that now. But yeah, Ghost is a great track. And hopefully maybe we'll do that in a future lesson. That could be one of your requests. So what we're going to do is look at how, I've had lots of people sort of say, how do I record? Okay, so how do I record my songs? How do I get my guitar tone and things like that? So funny enough, during early lockdown, so in the UK, funny enough, we're just about to go into full lockdown over Christmas, which people aren't too happy with. So at the start of lockdown, which is in March, I went into online teaching, and funny enough, both of my amps broke. So in previous videos, I think I've done about 90 videos now. I've either used a Marshall JVM 210C or a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe 3. Okay, and then I've just plugged my Telecaster. So my Telecaster, you know, is a pretty inexpensive one. It's a Mexican one. I bought it when I was 17. First proper guitar. It's been bashed around, played at school shows, badly out of tune, you know. So it's not as if I've got a really expensive setup. So before my amps broke in lockdown, what I'd normally do is I'd plug my guitar into my amp, and generally with Bruce, you don't often need, he doesn't have a big pedal setup like Nils has. I remember getting quite close at Leeds in 2013, and you could see his whammy pedal and a big pedal setup. Well, Bruce, you know, he doesn't really, I don't think he uses that much things. So in terms of clean, crunch, distortion, that's really what you need. You know, you need a nice Telecaster for Bruce really, and a nice bright sound, and then you plug it into a nice amp, get a clean, ideally a valve amp, clean sound for most of his stuff, and then obviously, you know, some overdrive or distortion, things like that for solos and things like that. But we can look into that a little bit later. So at the moment, what I do, because both of my amps are broken, I go through a Boss ME80, which is a fairly inexpensive, I think it's about a couple of £100. You can get it online. What I really like about this is it's a really simple pedal board, because you get a lot of really complicated pedal boards now. So again, the picture might be quite small there. Let me know if the pictures are coming out okay there. So basically, you've got your sort of main effects, you've got your preamp. So at the moment, for example, all I have selected is the preamp and then an EQ. I'm not even using half the pedals most of the time. And then you can just sort of check different amp settings, and that's the way I do it. So I don't think I wouldn't say I'm using anywhere near the setup that Bruce uses, but you can kind of mimic the sound, you know, clean sound, make sure it'll get a good, nice, thick sort of valve amp ideally. So that's the first thing I do when I'm, again, recording my guitar. So I will go into my Boss ME80, then that goes into a preamp. Now I've got a really old preamp, a Roland V Studio 100. But any preamp these days will work fine. And funny enough, this will be kind of, won't work soon if I upgrade my Mac, because a lot of old preamps won't work with it. So that's, it's just a way of taking the signal from your effects board, or if you're going for an amp, from an amp, use a DI box or something like that. Just sorts out the signal, goes into a preamp. Again, you can get preamps now for about 50 quid, you know, or sorry, $50 or something like that if you're American. So the idea is you get something like that, simple preamp. Hi Keith. Keith is my tech guy. He sorts everything else. He helped me sort out OBS the other day, so thanks very much, Keith. Yeah, so the idea is you're going from, if you're recording from an amp, you go from a DI box. So the amp, plug in your DI box, that goes into the preamp, then that goes into the computer. Now these days you can get really, really good cheap, they're called DAWs, or digital audio workstations. So the digital audio workstation that I use is Logic Pro X. So I actually started using this during lockdown, because there was all these kind of COVID kind of deals on, and this is just a big upgrade from GarageBand. And GarageBand is just, again, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at all in music technology. I just like to press the buttons, basically, like compression and things like that. And if it works, if it sounds good, and that works for me. For me, it's really good. If you're a Mac user, something like Logic Pro works really, really good. So yeah, that's my kind of when I'm recording electric guitar into an amp or an effects board, and then out from the amp or the effects board into a preamp, and then into Logic Pro X, or any other. You can get free you know, digital audio workstations. It's just, I find this works really easy for me with my kind of limited music technology skills. But it's one of those things that you seem to be getting better at it all the time, and I'm really, especially as I'm doing backing tracks nearly every week now, or most of the time anyway. So that's kind of the first slide. So I hope that gives you some idea. And obviously that's just for the electric songs. So for the acoustic songs, I will generally just plug my acoustic guitar, which is a Takamine, I'll find out the model, I think EG520S or something. It's a discontinued model. That only cost me about £300 in the UK, so it's not like one of Bruce's £2,000 Takamines. Cool, thanks Carl. Yeah, I've heard of Reaper. I've heard lots of good things about that. Again, I'm not a music tech geek, but again, just whatever works for you really. The main thing I always encourage with recording is get a good sound at source. You know, so get a decent level with the guitar. You don't want the guitar level to be distorted or weak. So yes, good stuff. Okay, so that is kind of how I record. So yeah, acoustic, I'll just go straight from my acoustic guitar straight into the preamp. I don't have any acoustic pedals. And then when we're in Logic Pro X, often what I'll do is I'll use some of the plugins there. So some really good stuff, and reverb and things like that. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at the next slide. Cool. So the next question I've kind of got is how I kind of work out the songs, and how it, what's the process for me recording these songs and then putting them out to you guys, which obviously I hope you watch and you enjoy. So the first thing I do in terms of, if I take a song, so what was this week's song? I've forgotten it already. Shut Out the Light. Yeah, so I've been recording, I'll show you a slide from that later from Logic Pro. So Shut Out the Light, that's been requested for this week. So that'll be up tomorrow, by the way. So the first thing I do, if it's an album version, in fact, regardless of what version, I'll listen to the song first, sort of the album version, unless it's a specific live recording or something like that. Okay, so I'll listen to that first, and then work out roughly the chords, etc., etc. Now, if it's a live version, I'll also check out some live versions just in case, if it's an HD version, I can look at his guitar and think, oh, okay, he's got a capo on fret 3 there. That sounds quite deep on the low E string. He might be using an open tuning. So basically, that's how I sort of start to learn the song. Yes, for example, Shut Out the Light, there's a version that's online, I think from Paris in 1985, but it's completely different from the record, so that's not very very useful, to be fair. But yes, the idea is any little sort of tricks and things like that, ideally like live HD versions when the camera's right on panning on Bruce is really useful, so I can basically just look at what he's playing and copy it basically. But often, Shut Out the Light pretty much worked it from the album version, because the live version in Paris was with the capo in a completely different key. So he does change keys up a lot. So yes, also basic music theory would be really handy. Knowing some basic keys. So this is kind of major scale theory, TTS, TTCS. You might not have heard of that sort of stuff. And then the idea is, the chords or triads that appear in each key. So for example, if I worked out the first chord that Bruce plays is a G chord, but it's on capo 3, I know probably a good chance it's in the key of B flat major. And then I know my chords, B flat major or B flat major, C minor, D minor, E flat major, F major, G minor, and A diminished. So it's kind of having that sort of base knowledge really helps me, because I know, okay, he's playing that chord there. I know the chords already of B flat major, and that'll help me to kind of work out the song quicker. I also know kind of chord extensions. I know my chords really well. So I know the Cage chord system and things like that, so I can work out all the different positions. Again, check out my other channel, JS Music School. So I'm doing lots of 10-part series on this stuff, so it'll really help you. So a lot of it's trial and error. But yes, really, some sort of fundamentals of music theory can really help sort of work out. And again, as I was saying, if it was in B flat major, chances are if there's a solo in it, I'd be using the B flat major pentatonic or the B flat major scale. So you're constantly kind of a process of elimination there. Cool. So that is the kind of the first part of working out the songs. Then what I tend to do. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, Keith. You keep chatting. I'm going to keep talking. Cool. Hi, Max. Yes, I've had some interesting times. So I've got Shut Out the Light. I'm doing try to imitate a 12-string guitar. So I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So basically, I haven't got a 12-string guitar, although I really could do with one because it was quite hard to work out. I basically just did 2 acoustic tracks, one kind of lower down the neck and then one an octave higher to kind of mimic it. So hopefully you'll enjoy that when you hear that tomorrow. Okay, so then the next step is, once I've kind of worked out roughly what key it's in, roughly what the chords are, I'll get a song structure going. So the song structure is what you'll see in the, that's just for me to break everything down, and it's just really useful to kind of remember, the order of the song and things like that. Okay, so that's the song structure. And then my next step would be to tab it all out on Guitar Pro. So again, if you haven't got Guitar Pro, I thoroughly recommend it. I'm not paid to say that. I can give out discount codes because I've got a license with Guitar Pro, so you can get a 50%. I mean, it's something like £30 or £40, and for the program is unbelievable. So if you're thinking about getting any tabs from Subscribestar or from the new website jsmusicschool.co.uk, I thoroughly recommend getting it in Guitar Pro format. You could even export it out of Guitar Pro into PDF as well. And the good thing about Guitar Pro is you can slow down, speed up tracks, loop it, and also you'd have, for example, I don't know, think of further on up the road, but it had like 5 different guitars. They'll all play at once. You can kind of do one at a time. You can mute one while you play along with another. It's just phenomenal. So yes, I would tend to do the main guitar first in Guitar Pro, then add another track, and then do some other work. Again, I'm always kind of referring to the song structure to make sure I've got, okay, so how many bars is the intro? Right, that's the intro. and first verse and so on. And you also look out for patterns. Often verses will be 8 bars, 16 bars, and then they'll be, you know, repeated later on in the song. Okay, cool. So that's roughly how I'll work out the songs for the main guitar. And then the same with all the other instruments. Again, I'm a kind of a very basic piano player. It's mainly right-hand stuff, but I'll do the same sort of thing. If I know the song's in key of E major, I know the E major scale on the piano, and I know the triads that are built up from E major, it allows me to work it out a little bit quicker. So that's, again, so some basic theory knowledge is really, really useful. So I would, if you're thinking about getting just a general better guitar player, learn your major scale theory, TTS, TTTS, the triads of each key, circle of fifths, sight reading and stuff like that. And that will really help. Cool. So what we're going to do now, so Carl was asking earlier about how the backing track process, so creation process. So this has obviously I've been doing this a lot more in the last year or so, especially if we've been locked down and things like that. So the idea is how I make my backing tracks. So again, it's just a process now, and I'm kind of fine-tuning it, because if I have to make a backing track and a guitar solo video for subscribe stars and patrons, I'll have to spend a lot of time that week, and I often spread it out for the week. So I don't know, Tuesday I'll do some social media, Wednesday I'll then think, right, I'm going to do the song structure, Thursday I'll tab it out, Friday I'll do a backing track, Saturday record, Sunday edit. So it's quite a long process, but it's always a good feeling once it's all done and they're out there. So yes, so the first thing I will do is, if it's a rock track, I will program the drums first, okay? And I program these in Logic Pro. I just take one of the kits they've got in there. And if you're not familiar with kind of Logic Pro stuff, it's worth looking into that. So you've basically got this kind of matrix window, and you've got the beats 1, 2, 3, 4, and you put, say, the hi-hat. You think, oh, Max is on the hi-hat. Again, I'll watch videos on YouTube, you know. Oh, he's playing the hi-hat there, and he's playing quavers, so 1 and 2 and 3. So I'll just put 1 and I'll ping it in Logic Pro. I'll do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then they'll think, okay, where's the bass and the kick drum? Because I play drums as well. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the snare often is on 2 and 4, bass drum pattern. I'll work that out, and then that's maybe a 2-bar phrase that I'll copy for 4 times for the intro, and then I'll just do all the fills and things like that. So that's all done on programming. Again, lots of trial and error on Logic and things like that. So that's the drum programming. So that's the first thing. It's mainly just to get the song structure. And what I'll do is I'll label it. Okay, so intro, and then first verse, and then, so the idea is I've got the whole song structure first laid out on Logic, again, or any other digital audio workstation. Okay, so yeah, so thanks for everyone for joining. I'm hoping you're enjoying this. Again, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe as well. This will also be on YouTube, I think, afterwards. This is my first one though, so yes. So that's the drum track. We'll do that first. Then I'll do all the other kind of MIDI instruments. So I've got an M Audio key station in front of me here. You can't see it, but it's basically just ones and zeros. There's no sounds on this keyboard, and that just plugs in via USB into my computer. As soon as I open up Logic and put what they call a software instrument track, so I can pick any instrument I want, a grand piano, a organ, a harpsichord, a saxophone. Again, it's not quite Clarence, you know, it's just simple MIDI instruments, but again, the sounds these days seem to be getting better and better and better. So I'll do those one at a time, depending on the song. For example, if it's a piano heavy song, I don't know, something like Jungle Land, which I haven't done yet, and I could do with a break after Thundercrack. But yes, so if it's a piano heavy song, I'll probably do the piano first, because otherwise there might be big gaps where there's just nothing, you know. So put the more important instruments first. So piano, and then organ, saxophone. And again, sometimes it won't be note for note. You know, I might just do an organ solo in the style. You know, again, just think about the key, what key it's in, and then just do a solo that's similar to what you know, Daddy Federico is doing, or Charlie Gordano. I can't remember what his name is. You know, the new guy that's been there. Well, not new. He's been there for years now. But yes, so I'll just do it in layers. So everything tends to be in an order. Okay. So that's the MIDI instruments. Now the next thing I'll do is probably do a backing guitar. So I'll look at Steve's and Nils's parts. Again, sometimes it's difficult to know who played which on the recording, because I'm kind of doing lessons every week. It's often time limited, so you know, just think, well, okay, not that I'm like, oh, that will do, but I'll always aim to get a really good quality track every week. But it might not necessarily be the exact thing, you know, that's on the record. I'm doing my own kind of take on it, but as close as possible. Often with sort of Stevie Van Sant, the way that they work it, and Nils is it's all about layers. So Bruce might be in standard tuning, but then you know, Stevie will have a capo on fret 1 and doing different chord voicings. So it will kind of thicken that sound up, and then you've got Nils maybe on a capo on a different fret. You know, wouldn't be surprised if you had Bruce on standard tuning for one song, Stevie capo 1, Nils on capo 3 with different sounds, and that will really give you those layers, and that's what it makes it so good. All those different voicings, it's just brilliant. So that, again, especially when I'm recording stuff like Roy's parts, I'll often, because I'm not a pro piano player, I'll like do 2 bars at a time, stop it, record it, and then I'll do the next 2 bars. So often, you know, if you hear a lot of piano in the backing tracks, it will be, it may not have been recorded all at once. And I've just done 2 bars at a time, or even the right hand first and add the bass notes. So, you know, tomorrow's video Shut Out the Light, I did some violin stuff that comes in verse 3. And then I thought, oh, actually, I'll put some bass notes, and I'll just record that over on top. So it's all about layers. Yeah, so that's the 3rd step of making the backing tracks. And then once I've made the backing track, I will record that in Logic Pro. And often, because again, time sensitive, I'll have Logic Pro up where I'm recording my guitar over that backing track for the walkthrough. And then I'll have Guitar Pro up, which I kind of time, I do a click track. So, because it's not really have time to memorize it off by heart, I'll actually sight read it that I've tabbed out, or sight read while recording. So that's why you see me looking quite confused, because I'm just concentrating so much, because if I make a couple of really bad mistakes, I will probably start re-recording. So hi Joe, thanks for joining. Max, obviously Keith, Carl, Chris, Hollyman, long-time supporter, Ralph, and everybody, thanks very much for joining and watching. Hopefully you're finding this useful. Let me know if you need me to, if the volume is cuts out or anything like that. So yes, so that's part 4. Once I've made the backing track, I'll record it, play it into Logic Pro, record it into a Logic Pro, and I have my Canon M50. That's the camera I use, and I've got some posh sort of YouTube lights that kind of blind me so I get enough light. Currently where I'm living at the moment, I'm right by a window, so you might see the light. It's really hard to control the light, so often it gets dark, and yeah, often, you know, they say sort of film. Hi Ryan, thanks for joining. Hi Jim, hi Joe, thanks for joining, much appreciated. Hope you're finding the videos useful. Tom Jode, great name there. Cool, so yeah, so that's kind of, again, there's always room for improvement. So in terms of, if you've watched my old JS Music School videos from 5 years ago, which not many people have, and they're just cringeworthy. Again, it's one of those things I'll keep improving 1% every video, and you know, just keep improving. So lighting and things like that, I wouldn't say I'm a pro. I use the kind of basic lens on my Canon M50 and just make sure there's lots of light and so on. And then basically I actually use iMovie, which is a pretty, again, it's free on the Mac. So that's how I actually edit my videos together. So I'll take the video from the recording on the Canon 50. I plug in my card. It's just a normal 32 gigabyte card. I'll go into iMovie. Once I've recorded my song into Logic, I'll then export that as an MP4. So high kind of resolution, not high resolution, but big file size. And then the idea is then, once I've got the audio from my Logic Pro exported, you then line it up. So you look at the waveforms. So you don't want the audio from the camera, that just sounds awful. And you look at the waveforms and then you line them up, and then I take out the camera audio because it just sounds really bad, okay? So that's kind of how I do it. So hopefully that fine. Again, I'm quite happy to answer any questions about any of that stuff. So feel free, any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll aim to answer any. There's kind of quite a lot of stuff I'm throwing at people. But again, in terms of guitar sound and things like that, I'm literally changing settings all the time and pressing buttons. And even yesterday I found out there was a really nice accurate tuner on Logic Pro. All those sort of things. It saves me getting out my tuner and all that sort of stuff. So same with Guitar Pro. I've never had any lessons on how to use Guitar Pro. Just pick up shortcuts and things like that every time. And again, if you want to get some of the cool, thanks Carl, thanks MLL Android. Oh, Max is just about to ask a question. Cool, thanks Chris. Yeah, it's quite a lot of work, but you've got to keep it going, keep the fans happy, as they say. Cool. So that's the kind of making the backing tracks. So what I've got here is I've just basically got a screenshot of my latest recording that I've done for tomorrow. So this is just the backing track. I kind of not rushed it a little bit, but I worked a lot yesterday to make sure I can get ready, do some prep for this live stream. So all these slides I've just done today whilst watching the football in the background. I was hoping that Liverpool would lose, but that wasn't the case. They won 7-0. I'm a Spurs fan anyway, so I hope that doesn't put you off watching the videos. Okay, so so this is basically a screenshot of my Logic project for tomorrow. Again, there's loads of stuff on here I don't have a clue how to use, but again, I think it's this very sort of standard layout of a digital audio workstation. So I've kind of got you've got the main instruments up here. So SoCal is basically a drum kit, and then I've got 2 acoustic guitars there. So this for Shut Out the Light, basically I've got one in standard tuning, and then the second one I've got is the same kind of chords but with a cap on the 7th fret. That's just to mimic a 12-string guitar. With the video tomorrow, just I won't probably have time to record a breakdown for the steel guitars, but they will be on the tabs. Yes, just time sensitive this weekend. But so that's, again, I would have done the drums. There's no drums in this song for Shut Out the Light. I think in the second verse there's a tambourine that comes in on beat 4, so I've just put that there. So that was a nice easy. So Thundercrack, for example, I spent about 2 days just doing the drums, because the early Bruce stuff is by far the hardest and or most challenging, should I say. And it's Vinny's stuff when he does a fill every 2 bars. You're like, oh, not another fill, Vinny, but it's great. It's a good challenge. But yeah, a lot of the Mac stuff is a lot easier to transcribe drumming, because I think Bruce hired him for his simplicity and the fact that he doesn't go, it's not too jazzy. But again, it's kind of the appeal of the early stuff. That it's a really nice different sound, and I love a lot of the early stuff. So yeah, obviously tomorrow's drum track is pretty simple. It's just a tambourine, but generally I'll double click on that and another window will appear where you basically have this kind of matrix window. You put the hi-hat in, you put the kick drum in, you put the kick drum, and there's things like velocity, so you mix it up a little bit. So 2 acoustic guitars there. These are violins. These are kind of there's some violins. Again, it's very hard to get it exactly the same as a recording. These are proper, been recorded in a studio for hundreds of thousands of pounds. And this is just me playing on a MIDI keyboard. But again, they can be quite nice. And then at the moment, I'm thinking about getting some harmonica. So I'm just looking at all the questions. There's loads of them just come in. Thanks, Carl, for behind the scenes. And hi, Delash. Thanks for Delash is one of my pupils. His daughter's also one of my pupils as well, doing really well. Oh, sorry, Andy. Yeah, so Andy's also one of my pupils, and sorry about that because he's a Crystal Palace fan, so I apologise. Cool. Yeah, thanks for the positive words on the Thundercrack track. So yeah, so this is my my window for Shut Out the Light for Tomorrow. And again, it's a much simpler backing track here because there's no piano in it. It's just a bit of violin that comes in on the third verse, and then the main guitar here. So I've recorded the walkthrough. I then go and edit it afterwards. So I put the tab all over it. So the tab is basically done where I basically just do a screenshot of the Guitar Pro window and cut out lots of little pictures of the bars. I know there are other ways of doing that better. I just haven't got round to looking into it properly yet. Hi Peter from Italy. Hi Kim. And yes, again, thanks everyone for joining in. Okay, so that is the kind of process roughly for making the backing tracks. So hopefully you find that relatively useful. Again, I'm just sorting out levels. I do things like putting in this thing called chroma verb, which is just, I just put it at 20% generally. I don't really know. You can set like, you know, if you think it's a really big live setting, you can make it sound like it's more in a stadium. And then compression, again, I don't really understand the physics and how it works, but I just press the buttons and hopefully it sounds nice. And there's things like panning, you know, whether it comes out the left speaker, right speaker, and effects and stuff like that. For example, the Tunnel of Love solo video that you can see on Subscribestar or Patreon, that's got loads of chorus on it. So I'll just, again, you can use a chorus pedal. Often I'll just record it clean and then put a chorus effect or modulation effect on Logic afterwards. So that's kind of the kind of recording process there. Cool. So the next questions, people sort of, I think it was Ralph, Ralph Stern. Thanks for joining, Ralph. Okay, so Max, I'm still beginner level and playing guitar. Do you have a good exercise to play pickings accurate without looking? Okay, we can get to that in a second. That's quite a cool little question. Okay, so so this is basically Bruce's common tunings. Now, there's a lot of Bruce songs that I haven't done yet. A good thing about having a Bruce Springsteen guitar channel is I don't think I'll run out of songs to do for a while. And on the whole, he uses standard tuning. Okay, so that's just basically E, A, D, G, B, and E. Okay, so make sure. Hi Jim, I'll look into that in a second. I can't particularly remember the distortion setting, but I think I roughly can remember. That I think in terms of Prove It or Night distortion setting, I think what I did is I got a crunch setting on my Boss ME80 first. Again, just a standard overdrive, crunchy sound. You might not even need a pedal. People sort of say, oh, what pedals do you get? Often, for example, my Marshall, when I used to gig with that a lot, before it broke, I need to get it repaired, but there's no gigs at the moment because of COVID. I would actually, the distortions channel and overdrive stuff in Marshalls are unbelievable. So I would actually just use the foot switch that came with the amp to get a distortion. You know, you don't often have to have a pedal. So yeah, I think for Prove It All Night, Jim, thanks for that question. I'll probably plug it in with a crunch setting and then maybe tweak it with Logic Pro afterwards. So I probably, there's this thing called like MXR distortion. Oh, very cool. Yeah, so he might have had specific pedals for each recording. That's quite cool. Thanks for answering that question, Ralph, for me. But yeah, often you can just kind of tweak it. I just like a really thick, rich sounding, you know, and as you can see in the videos, Really, I was aiming to give it a little bit more energy than I normally do, because it's just kind of such an energetic performance that it's just amazing. I was kind of glad when it was over though, because it was just quite exhausting, but it's always a good feeling once they're done. So yes, standard tuning on the whole, I would say, and this is just based on most of the videos I've done so far. And he will do capos a lot, especially if it's a live version. You might not like it, might be too low. Again, this is to do with music theory. You might think, well, actually my voice it might sound better at a higher pitch. So what they'll do, you know, he'll just put a capo, you know, instead of it playing on, you know, if you played a normal D major chord and then you think, well, actually that might sound a bit more energy to it if I raise the key, or it suits his voice at that particular time. He'll put a capo on fret 2 and just raise it up by a tone. So even though he's playing the same shape, it would actually be an E that's coming out rather than a D. So capos is used a lot, and don't think, oh, what's on the album he'll always play live. I've seen actually throughout the decades. I was doing a video, I can't remember what video it was, but he was doing, you know, in the 80s he played it in this key, and in the 90s he played it in this key. So again, it could be a lot to do with his voice and etc. So cool. So the other, I would say, really popular acoustic tuning, and I've got 3 videos on this. So there is a playlist. If you just type in Springsteen C, G, D, G, B, D tunings, that's a really common. Cool. Yeah. So that's interesting. He can do falsetto, Carl. Yeah, really well. I remember some of those live DVDs. He can really hit some of those high notes. But yeah, maybe I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if he's got the flu or something, or he's playing with a bit of a cold. He might just say to the band, guys, we're doing it in this, we're dropping it down a tone today. I'm knackered. Or I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, just to make it easier for him. And I know Bruce likes to keep the band on their toes and just sort of, you know, come up with things, challenges for them. You know, I saw him in Cardiff play TV movie, and I don't think he'd ever played it. And he said, "Oh, what key is this in again?" So, "Oh, let's play it in G." So he's even kind of working out on the spot on the day sometimes. So that's basically, in terms of music theory, that's a G over C tuning. So what you've got here is you've basically got the 3 notes of G major chord, which are G, B, and D. Again, some knowledge of music theory will really help. And then basically with the C in the bass, and it gives it this really deep sound. So Tougher Than the Rest, acoustic, Help for Heroes, got a video on that. That uses that tuning. The Rising Broadway, I think there's another one that I've done, but I can't remember. I haven't put on the list, but yes, there's 3 I've done. So there's a playlist on that, so you can check that out. In terms of, now, I know there's probably lots of other tunings I just couldn't think of any at the time. So I think drop D he probably uses, and I might have even done some videos on there. You might even do some open G tuning, so that'll be D, G, D, G, B, D. That's more kind of famous with Keith Richards, Rolling Stones. Rolling Stones is just so good. Again, the thing with the Rolling Stones is you've got Keith on open tuning, and then you tend to have Ronnie on standard. I know that's not always the case, but the combination of those 2 guitars locked together makes it sound so good. So you'll have that in the E Street Band as well. So again, as I said before, lots of capo, and live versions change all the time. Okay, so that's kind of the common tuning side of things. So the next question, hope that helps. And again, I know there's probably a few others. Maybe he detunes the high E string, possibly. That's quite common. So instead of, when you play a C chord, I think it's a C add 9 or something like that. So little things like that, possibly open tunings. I'll generally say though, it's standard tunings on the whole from the videos that I've done so far. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at, yeah, you're probably right, Carl. Yeah, I love the Stones. Although they are very hot on copyright, I think. So, and I've already had a few issues. So, for example, my merchandise, I had that taken down, the Bruce Springsteen guitar. You might have noticed I've changed my logo. I had to go to Bruce Guitar. So you have to be very careful with that sort of stuff. And I know that the Rolling Stones people, I think, are quite hot on that sort of stuff. So, yeah, so I'll just, yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at kind of people are sort of saying, how do we get that Bruce sound? So I've talked a little bit about what I do for settings. Again, a lot of the time it's, get a telly, really. You need that bright sound. You can play with your pickups, and just make sure you've got the tone pot on your guitar, reasonable. It's not, if it's really muddy sounding, you won't want that. You want it quite high up, the tone pot on there, making sure, you've got the pickups. If you've got the neck pickup, that's going to be a warmer, softer tone. If you want it really biting and bright, and go to the bridge pickup. So play around with that. That will really help. Yeah, 2025 is probably about right, guys. Yeah. So that's in terms of sort of the sound. I'm not sure if anybody knows the amps. Even though I've seen Bruce about 37 times, I can't remember, especially if I had a few beers, what amps it's got, but I know they use a lot of Vox amps, I think. Vox amps, but again, really nice thick sounding valve amps. I think that's what you want to get, and a Telecaster. So, and also if you're going through another thing to bear in mind that I say to my pupils, you don't want to have a £1,000 guitar going into a £50 amp, unless you've got a really good deal on the £50 amp. You just want to have something that complements. It's kind of tends to be. And as I always say, it's about playing the parts first. A lot of the tone is in your fingers, how you control. Cool, thanks, Robbie. That sounds about right. So Fender amps, can't go wrong with Fender amps. Fender clean sounds are unbelievable, and they've got some good distortion sounds as well. So that is some more help with the sound there. So in terms of, but I also recommend, again, getting your chops up, basically, when it comes to learning solos, pentatonic scales on the whole is what Bruce will use, and then chord-wise, making sure, guitar's in tune, and also the Bruce type chords and picking. Make sure your strumming is really accurate. You practice playing with a metronome. Again, hi Tom, yep, Strat and Les Paul is amazing. You can't go wrong with those. I really want to get a Strat because I love, I sort of teach guitar to sort of disco stuff, Nile Rodgers and things like that. So, Strat, you can't go wrong with Strat. And also my favourite guitarist of all time is actually Slash. So Les Paul, I was supposed to be seeing Guns N' Roses at Tottenham Stadium, which would have been great, but it got cancelled because of COVID. Hopefully next year. So, yeah, you can't. Positive Grid, yeah, I've heard of those. Hi Gary, thanks for joining. So I've missed anybody's name out. Cool, yeah. So what we'll look at now is I'll pick the guitar up and hopefully you can hear it. Again, this guitar has been battered around a hell of a lot. So let me know if you can't hear that. So what we're going to look at first is kind of a common kind of strumming that Bruce does. And if you've watched a lot of my videos, he has, again, like most people, really common strumming patterns that he'll just kind of change. He might not even know he's in this strumming pattern all the time, but it's a really common pattern that's in lots of my videos. So check out lots of them. Down, down, up, up, down, up. So once you've got hold of this pattern, you can play. Thanks, Cole. You can play a hell of a lot of Bruce stuff, and just generally a hell of a lot of songs, really. So down, down, up, down, up. He does indeed. I remember seeing it at a Gary, the Telecaster. I saw it when I saw him at Madison Square Garden. This is when I used to spend far too much money and rack up a credit card bill on Bruce, which I've now paid off. It's taken a worldwide pandemic to pay off my Bruce debt, which is bad because I should have paid it off years ago. But anyway, there was the museum, a pop-up museum in Philadelphia. I went there for the day, and he had his guitar on show there, the classic one there. It's just the beaten up one, but it's just amazing. I've also met his guitar tech in Wonderbar, Kevin Buell. So he's the one that throws him all the guitars. It's quite cool. I know he's done a lot of work to that Telecaster, I think, but I'm not sure what. Different pickups, things like that. So yes, strumming pattern wise, again, some basic music theory will really help. learning to play to a metronome as well. Something like Lumbeat I really recommend, so it's free on YouTube. Again, I'm not endorsed by them or anything like that. I use it all the time on lessons. It's basically just a drum beat. So practice playing with Lumbeat, you know, different tempos, with all your different strumming patterns. That will do wonders, and for your scales as well. And often, as I say to my pupils, you kind of got the analogy of the porridge and the raisins. So the porridge is all your scales, your theory, and it's what actually makes you much, much better. And then you got the raisins, which are the songs. So most people tend to try and go straight for the raisins without, you know, which is the treat. Yeah, sorry if you don't like that analogy, but yeah, that's kind of, it's just simple. Yeah, you know, the best stuff to do is work on your theory, work on your scales, work on your cage chords, you know, being able to play a C chord up the neck, all that sort of stuff will just help you make a, you know, a better guitarist. So down, down, up, up, down, up. What we have here is one crotchet. Now, because a lot of my fans are from America, thanks, and well, thanks to everybody watching, but I think when I look at my views, about 40 or 50% of you are from the States or Canada. So last year I've been referring to the musical rhythms in the Western terms and the US terms. So the Western terms being crotchet, quaver and so on, the US terms being whole note, half note, etc. So that's why I've been doing that. Okay, cool. So a part caster, yes. I think eventually I'll probably have to get one of the kind of a signature model made up for me with the roughness of it. That would sound cool. So that's why I mentioned that in videos, because I've got a lot of US and Europe audience. So a crotchet is basically one beat or quarter note, same thing. So one, if you did the whole bar, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you'd have 6 quavers or 8 notes. Okay, so they're half a beat each. The way you count quavers, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then there's a tie, which means your first upstroke rings out for a little bit more, and this is how it sounds. So down, down, up, miss, up, down, up. Again, that's definitely a strumming pattern that you want to get really comfortable with, switching between all types of chords, bar chords. You wouldn't use that chord, but just getting really comfortable with all those, that strumming pattern and changing between open chords, bar chords, that will really help learn Bruce stuff. So again, for some of this stuff, he does a lot of picking. So if I did the same pattern now, but picked through the chord, I just realised I've forgotten to answer a question from, who was it who asked about picking? Sorry, I've lost it. It's good that people are asking, chatting. Let's keep chatting. So I think it was a question about picking. So hopefully I remember this. But yeah, so picking, if you haven't done that before and you're just used to strumming, I'll just learn a few picking patterns to start with and also work on your alternate picking. Okay, so I think the question earlier, something like this, to work on your string independence without looking, that was it. So an exercise I give to my pupils all the time, again, this is what I call the porridge side of things, is I call it the Achromatic Scale. Again, it's very dull. Yeah, thanks Carl for repeating the question. So this is the Achromatic Scale, and what you really want to be able to do is you're basically syncing your right hand or your strumming hand, picking hand with your left hand or your fretting hand, okay? Now, without looking, yeah, the best way of doing it is exercises like this. So this is the Achromatic Scale. I'm going 5, 6, 7, 8 on the E, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the A, 3, 2, 2, 1, sliding up and going 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, back to the 5th fret. I'll show you that one more time. And what I'm doing with my fretting hand is, that's the really important thing. Down, up, 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 down, up. Move that over and you're coming down, reversing it. It's a great warm-up exercise. When I was at college, ACM in Guildford, They used to do this as a warm-up most lessons. You can just do 2 minutes of it. It's really good for using all 4 fingers as well, because a lot of people like to avoid using a little finger like the plague. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 6, 5, 4, 3, 6, 5, 4, 3, 7, 8, 9. Yes, that's right. Yeah, there's a chromatic run in. So funny enough, I used to play that with my band. I've forgotten it already. Whatever it is. Again, that shows you how long I haven't gigged for. But yes, chromatic run in Born to Run. But in terms of, again, practicing your alternate picking, exercises. Yes, I will show you that again, Ralph. So what I'm doing, starting on the 5th fret of the E string, with my picking hand, I'm going down, up, down, up. And the idea is you're doing 4 fingers on 4 frets on each string. You're using all 4 fingers. And what it's going to do is exercises like this will really help to sync your hand up. So when you're doing these picking songs, you can kind of feel your way. You won't have to keep looking at your right hand, because you won't actually, eventually you won't want to look at your right hand at all. You're looking at your chords. So it starts off on the 5th fret, then it goes to the 4th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 2nd fret, just the way the guitar's tuned. You're doing the frets, when you're on the B and the G string, you're doing the same frets. 2, 2, 1, and slide up 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there. In terms of the theory, you're basically doing all of the notes from A. So A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. It's called 2 octaves, and then you do the same thing. And then back down. Most people find back down because you're starting with a little finger. 6, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ralph, if you send me an email, I can send you a PDF or guitar profile of that. Not a problem. So hopefully you find that useful. That's something I would work on for your picking. Also scales. When we get onto pentatonic scales, you know, have a look at my playlist on JS Music School where I go through loads of exercises. You know. And once you've got all these different exercises, when it comes to those exercises appearing in solos, you're laughing. So let's just take a common pentatonic scale, E minor pentatonic, from the 12th fret, the most common one. 12, 15, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 15, 12, 15. Again, for those practicing your picking, down, up, 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 down, up. So that's and then the idea is then you'll start to do exercises. Again, if my fretting hand, I'm really conscious, I'm going, this is now groups of 3. Again, check out my playlist on YouTube, on JS Music School channel. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. This is called groups of 3. Again, this will really help if you're struggling with some of the picking stuff. Eventually, string skipping is if you're struggling and you're hitting the wrong strings all the time. Thoroughly recommend doing string skipping. You can also do that with that exercise that I just showed you. The idea is with the pentatonic, if I just showed you here, string skipping, you do the E string, skip to the D string, go back to the A string, skip to the G, go back to the D, skip to the B, go back to the G, skip to the E. Again, check my other videos for that on the other channel, because that's just going to give you some more independence. Yes, don't forget, yes, on any YouTube video you can slow down the playback as well. Thanks very much, Andy, for watching, and glad that you're practicing your cage chords. That's what I like to hear. Okay, cool. So yeah, in terms of looking at the down, down, up, up, down, up pattern, then we can do this with a picking. Again, he'll vary all these patterns up, but again, these are kind of sort of the fundamentals, and then from there, practice a few other strumming patterns and you're mixing different rhythms. So that's basically the same strumming pattern, rhythm, down, down, up, down, up, but with picking. It's also worth mentioning with picking, Bruce does a lot of, he plays his picking often with, like he was doing an arpeggio. So I'm not going to go into arpeggios, but like down, down, and then up, up, up. Often, like with my pupils, I encourage them to do alternate picking. Again, this will help with that sort of down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. Or if it's a rhythm like this, I'll like down, down, up, down, up. I'll do the same picking as I would strum. So if it was like this, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. It's also good to get used to in terms of strumming, bass and treble, like, and things like that, accents. Again, there's a whole load of things we could talk about here, but yes, work on that those kind of two core patterns, I think, and then a lot of the time it's just variations of it. Okay, so let's now look at some of the kind of common Bruce chords. Okay, so what we've got here, now after watching lots and lots of Bruce videos and doing lots of lessons, I've come across a lot of people sort of saying, is there a particular way Bruce plays chords to make it sound Bruce, and everyone has their own sort of style, but there is definitely a few, yep, you're right, Tougher Than the Rest, a great example of that. So G chords, especially Bruce, play these quite different to a lot of other people. Again, music theory will be helpful here, but not essential. So this is a sort of a way that Bruce plays a G often. He'll play it with his second, third and fourth fingers. Sometimes he'll block out the A string. So it's still a G chord, or he'll put his middle finger down. Okay, and then he'll also maybe play it with his little finger on the B. So that is actually a G5 chord. Okay, so that is a power chord. So it's good to know that power chords are though kind of thicker sound. They're not major or minor. So this chord I'm playing here actually only has two notes in it. A G. Yep, suspended fourth and two. I can go through a few of those as well. Suspended chords are amazing. Thanks for pointing that out, Gary. So it's a G5, little finger, third fret. So it's good to know that a power chord, and this is an open power chord, only has two notes in it. This has a G, a D, a G, and then another D. I'm blocking out the high E. So even though it looks very similar to a G, it's not a G chord, it's a G5 power chord. So anytime you see the number 5, it's a G5 or A5, it means there's only two notes in it, just duplications. So that gives it a sort of thicker, slightly different sound. So G5, E5. So that G5 and E5 there sounds completely different than, say, G major and E major or E minor. So it's good to kind of be aware of some of that, like with the tabs and things like that I've done. So not that I should be encouraging this technique-wise, but he does do, a lot of the time, he uses his thumb for this chord, which is D over F sharp. Now, from a guitar teacher's point of view, I wouldn't encourage you to do that. It normally shifts your hands over. Things like that. Very American rock sounding. It's like G5. D over F sharp is basically a D chord, but the F sharp is moved to the bass note. So that's called a slash chord. Nothing to do with the guitarist slash, but that's what they're referred to. Now he does that a lot. It's very good for a passing chord from saying going G, or G5, D over F sharp, E minor, so like a running bass line. So that's something I would really kind of, yeah, Mark Bolan, yeah. Exactly, power chords. Used to love playing that song. Exactly, power chords, it can give you a different, completely different sound. to a major or minor chord. So it's worth being aware of that. And when Bruce uses a power chord, when Bruce uses a major or minor chord, or a seventh chord, or a sus chord. But yeah, learn the basic ones first. Learn this style. So he'll often play that with his thumb, but you might also want to play that D over F sharp. Again, you'll have to block notes out as well. I'm blocking the A string and the high E there. Play it with the first, second, and third or fourth. So that's a D over F sharp. He'll often play it with his thumb. And especially if he's singing, he does, a lot of the time he does his voicing, I think, for ease, to make sure he can focus on his vocals and keep really similar chord shapes all the time. So that's, again, open tuning as well. Allows you to play all the strings, focus on his singing. So that's D over F sharp. Now we've got C add 9. Again, very kind of common chord. If you're going from that G chord or G5, you can leave your little finger there and do a C add 9 chord. Second, third and fourth fingers there. Again, nice kind of common chord in its kind of tunnel of love sort of stuff. And by doing that little finger, I think he often plays his D chords like that, or D5 power chord. So the little finger can just stay there, really small chord changes. So he's focusing in on his lyrics, storytelling, and all those awesome kind of live stuff that we see all the time. G add 9 is another kind of one that he plays a lot as well, which I think is that's more sort of sus2 stuff, but that's Two Faces, one of my favourite Bruce songs, actually, amazing song. So G add 9, and often when he's speaking to the crowd, when he starts, shout the light, he'll do things like that. He'll play around with these really nice open chords, just to pick through them, check his tuning. You often see him do that and then quickly change his tuning as he realises whilst he's talking to the audience he's out of tune. So a G add 9 chord is, in some of his slower songs, something really nice. And sort of Blinded by the Light style, he'll be doing sort of D over A chord, where he'll play kind of, I call this the All Right Now chord. So third finger, fourth fret D, first finger, second fret G, middle finger, third fret B. So that's a D over A chord, so that's sort of Blinded by the Light. I can't even remember how to play that. That was only a few weeks ago. Okay, so that's D over A and things like that. So give slightly different voicings there. Also his bar chords, F sharp minor over C sharp. So instead of playing a whole, again you can see this, I picked this up just mainly through watching him doing it rather than actually on the album versions. Sometimes it's quite hard to pick out exactly the voicings he's using. But again, the live versions, especially the HD ones, can really... Yeah, you could be right there, Ralph. I think he was even playing this on the Shut Out the Light version from Paris I was watching, but completely different version from the one we're doing, the album version tomorrow. So, but yeah, you could well be right there. He does that a lot, that chord, really nice. Again, E5 power chords that we've already mentioned. Again, there's going to be a lot of that tomorrow, stuff like Seeds. Power chords. Palm muting is a technique that you really want to get used to. It's one of those things where people say, oh, how do I do palm muting? And it's, as a teacher, again, like my drum teacher, when you sort of teaching people kick drum, bass pedal, kick drum technique, it's very hard for the teacher to see exactly how much pressure and things like that. But palm muting is something you really, if you want to get to some really good sort of Bruce playing. D over A. I'm using my third finger, Ralph, there. But you could use the little finger as well if you wanted to. He does use his little finger more than a lot of people, I think. So, okay, so that's D over A. He also plays a lot of chords up the neck, like, like a D shape and just move it up. Lots of things like that. Power chords, bar chords, he might, F sharp minor, he especially likes to play it where he blocks the low E string. You have to be very careful with this kind of shape to, cool, glad you're learning your palm muting, Carl, that's good to hear. So palm muting is where you're basically using the fleshy part of the hand to deaden the strings a little bit, but you've got to make sure, again, it's like learning to drive when you're using the clutch, getting that biting point. It's just lots of trial and error, and eventually you'll do it automatically. You're not kind of, it's got to be automatic when you're playing. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, so I've got some videos on palm muting on my JS Music School channel with some of the strumming pattern stuff that I've been doing recently. So that's palm muting. Again, you don't want it to completely mute it. Kind of keep applying pressure and getting that biting point. So you want to hear the notes clearly, but it's still, yeah, not palm muted. In fact, he starts off seeds, I think, like that. So again, really good technique and a really awesome, yep, Terrence Avenue freeze out. Probably use that, okay, I did that a while ago, so I can't remember that. Also maybe even broken E shapes as well, possibly. I think Bruce does stuff like that as well occasionally, so that would be like that broken E shape, middle finger 11th fret G, bar the 10th fret B and E strings, and that's basically a D major triad on 3 strings. I'm sure he's got some of that, especially in his early stuff. Blinded by the Light, all that kind of stuff is a little bit more advanced. What's my favourite Bruce song to play along to? Oof, that's a tough one. Thanks for the question, James. I don't know, I used to play Darkness on the Edge of Town. It's not necessarily the complicated ones, actually. It's just more my favourite songs, I suppose. Born to Run. Thanks, Carl. Glad you're finding the usefuls. Happy New Year to everyone as well. Yes, so lots of variations there chord-wise. Again, as I was saying, this F sharp minor chord, instead of playing a 4-bar chord, you'll often play it like this on 5 strings. It's basically the F sharp minor chord without the low E string. 3rd finger 4th fret A, little finger 4th fret D, and bar that. And if you're playing this, for example, in the key of A major, then he'll go to an A major chord and bar it with his 1st finger. Again, another very common chord. So if I was doing like, was it Don't Look Back? In fact, Don't Look Back is one of my favourite, even though it's a B-side. So favourite ones to play. I love that song. I think it's really underrated. Yes, I did enjoy Prove It All Night, but I was also exhausted afterwards. So I had to get it done in 4 days before going to a family trip, the only one I've had this year on lockdown. But yeah, I mean, that's just an unbelievable live version. There's actually some songs that people have requested recently that I hadn't even heard. I mean, I thought I was a big Bruce fan, but yeah, some of you guys are incredibly big fans, which is good. My first E Street, being a Tottenham fan, my first E Street show was actually at the Arsenal Stadium, which was kind of weird, 2008. But then I did manage to do 37 in about 10 years, so I really went for it, and yeah, racked up a lot of credit card debt, but it's all gone now. But yeah, no, Prove It All Night, that solo is just amazing. Also, that incident on 57th Street, I think it was CJ who requested that one, the live version. Again, I hadn't heard that version before. There's so many great live versions, and I've even had some requests that I hadn't heard properly before. Mr. Outside, I know that's on the Ties That Bind, that's coming up in the new year. So, and there's loads of stuff I like playing. I've loved playing Born to Run in my band, my covers band. We play Born to Run, and I always introduce it as the greatest song ever made. Although it's not normally a wedding-friendly song, but I just play it anyway. I think it's normally gets people going because it's such a brilliant song. We've got our keyboard player plays the sax on that as well. So yeah, so anyway, let's go back to the F sharp minor chord. So I just definitely think he'll do that more for ease. You know, he wouldn't, if he's singing F sharp minor to an A, it's a nice change. So instead of playing that full bar chord, he might play a stripped down version. Same with the B minor. You might play the middle 4 strings rather than playing the high E. Little things like that can make it sort of give you that nice bruised sound. So yeah, in terms of Jackson Cage, again, I know I've done a video on that, but yeah, I can't. To be fair, I know it sounds crazy. I know I've learnt these songs and put videos on them, but I would have to practice a lot of these songs. Wonderful. Funny enough, that's an underrated song in terms of learning. People sort of underestimate how complex the strumming pattern is on that song. Again, 16th note strumming. Yeah, common keys. Yep, F, Thunder Road, E, Born to Run, Badlands. Yep, very common. Also Stevie in terms of Badlands. You know. Actually, that's one of my favourite. For my school show, I do like a school of rock type show with my pupils. I always tend to pick some Bruce songs in the set list, but like Stevie was stuff do like. So he'll also do those kind of E-shaped bar chords, so minor, major, but just on 5 strings. So again, really gets, you know, you don't necessarily have to do the whole bar for that bruised sound. You know, Stevie does that all the time. Cool, and also again, scale-wise, I would really encourage you to practice your pentatonics, pitch bends. So this is A minor pentatonic. Practice your pitch bend. Another thing to work out, he's a very aggressive player, so you often kind of get these kind of pinched harmonics type sounds where it's just really aggressive, sort of playing with a pick almost. So that's another cool little trick there. Also, when you're doing your bends, a really good trick that I get my pupils to do. So if you're doing the A minor pentatonic, again, watch my video on my other channel, Jay's Music School, for that. Is, say we're doing a bend here, okay? These are the common bends, I would say, in the first shape of the pentatonic. That one, this one, this one, and they're the 3 most common bends you'll probably ever come across. So if I'm doing a full tone bend here, the pitch will be a tone, okay? So what you can do, if you're struggling with your pitch bends, play the target note and then bend up. And you've got that, your ear's getting accustomed to how big to bend up. Again, do different types of bends, bend and release, and listen to what, cool, yeah, for sure, yeah. Lots of bends, etc. Cool, so that's all, I think it's pretty much all I want to go through today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. There's probably loads of other stuff to maybe talk about in future in future videos. Yeah, you're right. Darlington County, yeah, so you'll use those pentatonics in conjunction with, not Cadillac Ranch, but yeah, I've got that coming up actually. But yeah, so often you combine the pentatonic with kind of chord. So there you go, that was that kind of, what chord is that? I've just completely lost my train of thought there. B flat major chord there. So that's Darlington County. Not sure if I'm playing the right key, but yeah, pentatonics and also different chord shapes as well. So yeah, I think thanks very much for watching. I think we'll leave it there for the time being. Thanks everyone for joining and being involved and on the chat and helping people out. I really appreciate that. Again, if you're haven't already, check out my new website, jaysmusicschool.co.uk. Also got Bruce t-shirts as well, mugs, everything. Although they might not arrive before Christmas. But hi Luigi. Again, it's good to see all the people that watch a lot of my videos. I really appreciate you commenting on all the videos. And Really appreciate you joining the channel. Yeah, and if you'd like to get into the guitar tracks, PDFs, you can either go on subscribeside.com, or if you don't want to bother with the monthly subscription or don't like the format of the website, you can literally go on my new website and you can download it straight to your computer. Just click the type of file you want, go to the Bruce shop, click shop, click backing tracks, click backing tracks, and then just pick the one you want, and it just basically downloads it directly to your computer. I've done lots of testing on the website, and yeah, thanks very much. Looks like somebody's got to go to Tesco as well. So anyway, so thanks very much everyone for watching. Any comments, you know, we can keep discussing this. I'm quite happy to answer any more comments in the comment section below. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will yeah, maybe see you on the next one. So really appreciate you watching. See you next time. Cheers. Bye.